Hey there friends, so yesterday evening I went to see It Chapter 2 with my friend James and I loved it. I mean, full disclosure, Stephen King has been one of my favourite storytellers since I was a teenager, really, since I first started reading his stuff, and it's probably that long, in the 80s, probably since I read It. So I'm not bringing much of that sort of knowledge or remembrance of the book really to the movies. But they're just pitched right for me. There's enough jokes, there's enough scares. It's just scary enough for me to really enjoy, I think. And anyway, I wanted to talk about what we can learn from It and It Chapter 2. And one of the things you find in horror movies particularly is you get many transitions between the real world, the normal world, and the kind of the conflict world. If you've looked at the Start Here foundation content on this channel, particularly if you've looked at the story structure video, you'll know that we sort of start, the three things we have are kind of character, conflict and consequence, right? But between character and conflict, we have a trigger, and the trigger is the thing that transitions, that pushes your character's world out of whack. So when you're telling a business story, you've got a sort of setting and a character, and then something happens, whether it's internal or external, that pushes the world out of whack, and we move that character into conflict and ultimately through action into consequence. And what you see very brilliantly in these It movies, I think, are, you know, scene after scene where the world starts out normal and then gradually things start to creep in that show you that Pennywise is about to go mental. And there was a classic example last night of Bev. Bev as an adult goes back to the apartment which she shared with her father. In the first film, she's kind of terrorised by her father, and now it's a friendly little old lady who's going to make her a cup of coffee and get her a cookie or something, and everything's fine, and then slowly everything isn't fine. Now, I'm not suggesting necessarily in your stories, particularly in the short versions, that you know, you build and build and build, but in longer versions of your story, particularly if you're doing a presentation or a pitch or something, you can kind of build these sort of things up, these things that kind of gradually push you out of true into the conflict world. And I think what movies like It shows us is the power of that moment, the power when something suddenly isn't right. And it's all too easy to skip over in business stories, I think. But that's what we can learn. One of the many things we can learn from Stephen King as a storyteller is using the power of that moment and not just sort of skipping over it, but really kind of digging into what changed, what pushed our world out of true and into conflict. Anyway, I thoroughly recommend, if you like horror films, you go and see it. It's perhaps not quite as good as the first one, but that could just be the kind of familiarity of it, I suppose. I loved particularly, watch out for, if you go and see it, watch out for the boy's head that turns into a kind of spider, because that is that is awful genius. Anyway, thanks for watching. See you in another video.